Hello, welcome to Breakaway with Dawn and Friends. Today, I want to choose a topic that is on my heart, and I'm not just speaking to my listeners, but I'm also speaking to my kids. I want them to know, no matter what relationship you find yourself in, whether it's healthy, toxic, yada yada, you can always choose how much power you give to them in that relationship. So, when I want to go deep, who I always ask to come around is Miss Claudia. Hi, Claudia.
Dawn, nice to see you. Thank you for
Thank
having me today. I
you.
appreciate
Yes. So, this is my form of therapy. So, I'm going to be a bit selfish today.
it.
And I'm not going to be too specific just to respect people's privacies a little bit. But I just was reflecting on a situation, and I know most of us in life deal with this, whether it's, mother daughter relationship, your spouse, your siblings, friends, because you can't choose your family members either. So I know we end up gravitating or having negative or toxic relationships. And so sometimes they can be very consuming and difficult to deal with. So I thought, I think it's time and I can use a little bit of a release. So why not? Let's talk about it. So if you've ever been stuck around someone who drains you, confuses you, leave you questioning your worth, this episode is for you.
Dawn.
I'm trying to make it lighthearted too.
Yes, yes, we have to, right? Because it is a heavy topic, and in fact, it's not very unusual, Dawn, as we know. If you think about the amount of years we live and interact with people, and all the relationships that we establish along the way, that we're bound to run into or have a relationship that is toxic or that is unhealthy, right?
Yes, and it's so funny because, before we get into it, you know how they always say you marry your what is it? Is it the girl that marries her dad and the son marries their mom?
I believe so. Yes.
Isn't that crazy? So then you grow up thinking, I'm gonna do better, I'm gonna be different, and so I try to keep telling my kids, oh, keep judging, keep judging. Watch what you end up with. Because I remember being a kid thinking, oh, when I have kids, it's gonna be this way. And it is the way that I said, but be careful what you ask for. So, yes. So, um, this hopefully one day my kids will come back and listen to this and just, you know, be able to understand that life is not always black and white. It's not always about what's right or wrong. Life is not like that, and so I see them go in and out of friendships and relationships, and you get concerned as a parent, so I'm trying to equip them with tools that will help them. And then I can tell you, parent to parent, you just got to remember, sometimes you just need to listen. And I can tell you, I'm bad at that. I'm just quick to the life coach in me just wants to get you through it, get you over it, give you the tools. Yes, and I always have to remember, turn it off, let's just listen. You know what I mean?
No, and I think going back to that, I think it's important, to I guess when you say toxic relationships is helping people understand because sometimes we may not know that definition of
Yes.
that. There could
Yes.
be, many ways that you may interpret that, and you may be in a toxic relationship and not realize that you are. So I think recognizing, right, what a toxic relationship sign could be, and knowing what those things could be. So if I may just kind of want to put it out there that some ways to recognize if you are potentially in a toxic relationship is one of the things could be if, for example, if the person that you're in the relationship with could be manipulating or controlling, or the individual is constantly judgmental or very critical of you. um that those are some signs of being in a toxic relationship, or even lacking boundaries. I think, prior to getting on this conversation, we briefly touched on boundaries, but that's another
Mhm.
thing, right? If that person has lacking boundaries towards you, then that could be also a sign of that. And then I think most importantly, you might have said that is feeling, you ever have those moments done when you have a conversation with someone
Mhm.
and then you realize, gosh, I am so drained. I'm so
Mhm.
drained after this interaction and I don't know why,
Yes.
and that could, again, potential signs of recognizing when you are in a toxic relationship.
Yes, I agree. They don't always look the same, right?
Right.
So, sometimes they're loud, they're full of arguments, like you said, manipulation, or just constant drama, which is basically what you said, right? So, I think over time, like it's like that quiet, settled digs and guilt trips, or people who leave you feeling like you just said, um, depleted, or just you know, they never use their voice. Did I say that right? Or even though, yeah, or you feel like you're not using your voice, you know what I mean? So, yeah,
Yeah.
and I
So
think the most important thing to remember is, your truth, right?
right, right, because what feels unsettling to you, if your instinct, your gut, and then or you recognize that these are some of the characteristics that this person has, then go with it, right? And not
Mhm.
feel like, oh, is it just that I'm imagining? Is it that I'm over exaggerating? Is it that maybe I'm creating something in my mind that isn't? And a lot of times that's how we push those thoughts away and we continue to be in these relationships that are not necessarily as healthy as one.
I know, and then I think it's maybe I can connect it like how we're like I feel we're onions. We're like onions, right? There's layers to us, right? And you know how like some people you can be around and like, oh my God, they energize you. You
Mhm.
feel that peace, you feel that joy, and then for some reason you're around people that just irritate your soul, like it's like,
Yes.
or, they just, why do you trigger me? Or like, I just think you have to be careful because you can see like that person that you're having a difficult time with. Just because someone else doesn't, does not mean your feelings and your experience is not valid, right? Because I think that's another hard thing because then you think, is it me? Is it something that I'm doing? Like, so I do want to, point that out that like, because we're built that way. We are layers, and sometimes you just don't vibe with people, or
Right.
you're not connecting. It
Right.
doesn't mean that it's you. It's the two of you together,
Right. That's right. Right.
right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a good point because like you said, you may think you have this quality like relationship with the person and then or you don't have a quality like relationship and then you see them interact with someone else and you're thinking, wait, this is the same person that I
Hmm.
don't have the best relationship with, but how
Hmm.
do they get along, see eye to eye or vibe well together, but I don't, and it makes you wonder, okay, maybe again, maybe it's me. Maybe I'm not interpreting this relationship to be what I think it is. But again, that is everyone's going to experience that relationship differently because the connection's going to look different for everybody.
Yes, yes. And you should trust your judgment, and your clarity should be enough. You don't need to like convince other people,
Right.
right? Like I
Right.
think that we go down that spiral one way or the other, whether it's like, is it just me or is it them? And then you do that, what is that? Thief joy, what is that? Comparison is the death of joy, or what did I
Depth
say
of
that right?
choice. Yeah,
The
yeah, yeah,
thief
yeah.
of
Cool.
joy.
Essentially, that's right. When you start to compare yourself,
Mhm.
that's when you're taking or you're stealing away from your joy because now you're putting yourself in a situation where you don't see yourself for who you are, right? And you're discounting the strengths that you have as an individual.
Yeah, yeah. And then I will say too, like, just because of me and being a life coach, like I do think you should first just say, okay, when you are reflecting, right? Because sometimes I do feel you go through situations or people are put in your path to help you grow. And that's not always it's not always pleasant things that come to you, right? So you can be put in a situation because you do need to grow from that, you need to learn from that. So I believe resistance calls resistance, right? So the more you're resisting something, you're not going to grow and learn, so then it's just going to keep happening. So that's the vicious cycle you go through in that relationship with this person, and yeah.
Yeah, no, I like that you said that, Don, because it's true. Those difficult challenges that we experience, and I think we've had a conversation around this before, is those are the ones when we step out of our comfort zone, that's and we're challenged to do something outside of that, then that's when we grow the most, right? So when these difficult toxic relationships do present themselves, we need to think from that perspective, right? Or at least it's helpful to think from that perspective is, okay, how do I overcome this? And how what I do about it and how I react about it
Mhm.
is going to make a difference, right?
Yes. Oh, yes.
If I react unhealthy, then this will continue to perpetuate the cycle that I'm in. So why not make adjustments to that and say, what am I going to take from this? And what am I going to leave? Right? Because you can't carry all of it with you. It will weigh heavily on you. It will do
Yes.
right a clear indention in your life that you don't want
Yes.
to carry. Right?
No, yes, you gotta protect your energy, right? So, I know this is not always avoidable, like we said earlier, like, this could be like a family member, there's no option, right?
Right.
So then
Right.
or coworker, you can't choose your neighbors or your coworkers. These are 3 types of relationships you cannot choose. Your coworkers, your family members, and your, neighbors, right? So, it can get tricky, and you can't just always remove yourself. So, to your point, you have to protect your energy, right? So if you know me, I always say, "This is my bubble, and I'm not gonna let anyone pop it," right? So you do really do got you have to create that invisible armor. Do you know what I
Right.
mean? So
Yeah.
that you don't let that negativity in, you don't let it stick, you don't have
Mhm.
to fight every battle, and that's one thing I always tell her to my daughter, "Choose your battles." Like, you don't have to, bicker about every little thing. Like, you can just say, this belongs to me, not them. Like, you just have to, like, create that boundary. Like, this is me, not you. Like, you know what I mean?
Right, right. Well, it's just being very clear and firm about what
Mhm,
you as an individual are going to accept as that behavior. So you decide, okay, this person, I don't allow them to, I don't know, interact with me a certain way. I will set my own limit and be firm
mhm,
about what I want, right? And really without feeling guilty about it, more so honoring and respecting what you feel, right? So that
mhm.
you can let go of whatever negativity will creep up on you if you don't realize that it is. So you also want, you said something about I think it's important to avoid escalating the conflict,
Yes.
right? Because if you continue to, let's say, bicker or engage or try to win an argument, okay, picking and choosing your battles, right? And avoid that blaming or escalating the conflict, because it's only going to create the conflict it's going to only make it bigger. You're going to walk away feeling more depleted than what you started. You're going
Mhm.
to be really upset. And in the end, you're probably not going to gain anything out of it. Again, it's going to take away your peace, and you don't want that, right?
Yes. Yeah, I like that. So, we're telling you the different types of scenarios and then the ways that you can navigate it, right? So, creating that boundary without guilt. Like, it's okay to, put the walls up, put that imaginary bubble. You know what I mean? And you let in what you want, you keep out what you want out, right? And then, you can try, detaching from the version of that truth, right? So they may never admit what they did, what they're doing, or even how it affects you. And I can say that, like, for me, like, I can tell you, a child that was raised by babies, babies having babies, right? Like, it took me a long time to realize that. And so, like, I had to accept that, right? And accept that, they didn't realize their every decision impacted me, and I feel that I wanted that the most. I finally got to say that to one parent, not so much the other, but it's like, I guess an acknowledgement would have been nice, you know what I mean? And I think I somewhat got it from one of them, but at the end of the day, it's not my job to fix that, right? So my healing journey is mine, right? And it doesn't depend on their apology or their acknowledgement, but it is nice, okay? So, what I try to, help my daughter with is, like, you cannot, say things or, like, expect something from this person you're not gonna get, like, and you just keep and I feel that that's what's irritating you, is that you're expecting them to acknowledge this, to see it your way, expect them I don't know. You're expecting a lot, and you're well aware that this person is not in that doesn't have that capacity right now. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, I think that's a right description. Is that person not having the capacity to understand or conceptualize what that person is feeling, right? Because
Mhm,
they haven't been able to, I don't know, expand on their emotional
mhm,
well-being to
mhm,
know that, right? To be able to say, "Oh, I really truly understand what you're feeling. Oh, yes, I do want to validate what you're
mhm.
experiencing." And I think that's quality advice, Don, is for you to tell your daughter that is, you know what, you continue to ask in different ways, still getting the same outcome and the same results. And that isn't going to change. And not because you are not worthy of that change,
Right.
because that has nothing to do with you. That has to do with the individual, right?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, and I say that over and over and over, and that's why I tell her, like, "You're giving it too much power. You're giving it too much weight." Like, I know it's hard, but it's like, this is where I would say, "This is not so black and white. This is," and she's so stuck on what's right. It's like, and I know we raise our kids that way, like, "Hey, right from wrong, right?" But you have to understand, the older you get and the more life you live and the more experience you have, it's not so black and white. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's not so what's right and wrong. It's like there's just too much grayness in that, in that gray area, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah,
then
there is. And then, yeah, go ahead.
no, so I was gonna say, so you just have to remind yourself of your values, right? Like your dreams, your joy, you can't, and I try to like give her like extra, like, journaling. We all know I have my journal. You can go on Amazon. Journaling. Like, she's in tune with music, so I know that she likes to
Oh,
use
that's
music
great.
as an escape. You know what I mean? So I think just anchoring your identity can help you as well.
Right, right. Because I could imagine that that takes a toll on you, right? When you're trying to get someone to understand things from your perspective, especially if this relationship is important to you,
Hmm. Hmm.
that you remind yourself that, okay, try not to, it's very difficult, but try not to get lost in that, right? Because then you feel like, again, your lack of worthiness diminishes. So it's important to kind of rebuild your
Hmm.
self-confidence when you have those interaction excuse me relationships, unhealthy relationships, because it does take a toll on you, right? So reminding yourself, okay, how do I reflect? He's talked about reflecting. And how do I rebuild who I am? Because this person, again, is not necessarily seeing eye to eye with me, or is not
Hmm.
understanding my perspective. I'm going to remove myself and not blame myself for that person not understanding me, right? Or, you know,
Right.
yeah, yeah.
Right? Because, and that's the thing, when you're a kid, you think everything's your fault, everything's about you. And I get that. Like, you're so centered into, and then depending, now I'm sorry, I'm using my daughter as an example, but like even adults, like, I think that me, that inner child's gonna come out. So like when you see yourself reacting or being triggered, like you really should reflect on that and see, where is that coming from? Do you know what I mean? Because then it's just going to continue to happen. And you know how they say you attract what you know too. So you got to be careful, right? So, it's how that whole thing going back to, like, you marry your parent when the daughter marries their dad, and the daughter marries their father or whatever, right? Or whatever I said. But yes. So I think that I had a point there, but I lost it. But I think you get what I was saying, right? But I did want to something that was interesting when I was, because when I think about these things and things that I want to talk about, I will listen to like other podcast episodes and just see if use it as a sounding board. Like, does what I'm saying make sense, or am I way off this topic? Because obviously I'm not any kind of expert. I just go off of my opinions, my feelings, and my experience, right? So I was listening to the Jay Shetty, and he had an episode with Jelly Roll. That's his name? That's
Jelly roll.
right. So interesting. I loved the episode. But what was so interesting that he shared, that was a little eye opener, and it made me wonder as a parent, and then what my kids see. But he said that when he was growing up, his mom, they didn't realize it, suffered with depression at the time. And so he wouldn't see her out of a robe, like a house robe, for a long time, you know what I mean? Let alone outside of her room. And so she always reverted or whatever, gone to her room, and that's how she was shut down, right? And so then when she would come out and sit at that kitchen table, all the girlfriends come over, the music comes out. And so like hopefully I'm not botching this, but like basically said that music is what brought the good times together, and he saw how it can help people, and so this is his he didn't realize it at the time, but this was shaping him, right? So anyways, what he was saying that was so interesting, and why I bring this up is because that was his experience with the bedroom in a sense. Like his mom, she went in there, she was shut down, and she would close the world out, right? So then he's married to Bunny. What was her name? Something Bunny, right?
Oh, I don't
His
know
wife.
his wife. I don't know her name.
Oh, okay. Well, I don't know if you know their story, but like she was, I believe, an escort. And so, yes, it's very interesting. But
I
anyways,
need to listen to it. That was on my next to do. Yeah, listening.
yes. And so she has her own podcast, by the way. So I do listen to her, but I didn't know till later. Oh, that's his wife or whatever. Anyway, so she had her own experience, and as we all do, right, our own journey. And so she actually would go to her room because that was her safe space, right? And so growing up, that's how she coped and dealt, and that's how she removed herself. So then now they're married and they're both learning each other. And
Right.
so then guess what, you know what I mean, when something happens, whether it's in their relationship or with her, if she feels she needs to be grounded or needs that safe space, she would go to the room. So then he would come in like, oh no, like my mom would go in and shut down and shut the world out. So he would go in and be like, are you good? Da, da, da. And she's like, what do you mean? Like, I want to be here. This is my happy place. So it was
Mm.
interesting and eye opening to like, oh, so then they have, because you learn each other, you learn about your partners and how you react and how you deal. And I thought, oh my God, it's so interesting because I feel that's how I am. Like, towards the end of me living with my parents, I did eventually have my own room, and that was my safe haven. That was my space. You know what I mean? And so to this day, I love my room. Like I can get lost in my room doing a lot of things,
Yeah,
but I don't know how my kids see that, but I'm like, "Oh my god, that's so interesting," like, I do that. I go to my safe space, and I think my husband does the opposite. So, you have these 2 kids seeing 2 different parents react a different way. So, I don't know, it just made me think, I wonder how they perceive it and what they think, and then ultimately it's learned behavior too, so I don't know. We'll never know. I'll know later. But do you get where how I'm trying to connect this to what we're like
absolutely.
I thought came to my mind and
But you know what? That makes sense because it's true. When a child looks at it from their perspective, right, is it could it could look a lot greater, more grave than when you as a parent thinking, I'm tired, I need to go to my room and just decompress. Your child may perceive it as something different. They're upset or she's not happy or, but I think going back to that example that you gave, I think that's where the communication comes in. And that's
yes.
how important it is to communicate your feelings. Of course, not be an open book by no means, but what's age appropriate and what's important to relay to your children, and as long as they're emotionally capable to handle what you're trying to share to them with them, to help them understand, navigate these difficult situations, right? Is that in some instances we're going to find ourselves, this is how I cope, so if you ever see me in this state of mind, this is what I'm
Yes.
doing.
Yes. Yeah.
So how about you share with me when you're in a certain state of mind, how do you cope? And that way the parent doesn't misinterpret the, okay, I'm going to go out with my friends as a bad thing, more like, okay, that's their way of coping. Or if they blast their radio, or excuse me, it's no radio anymore, but if they blast their music, I just dated myself. If you blast the music, and the parents like, are you kidding me? I just came home and I'm tired and I don't care to hear that. People get upset of that, but not realizing, okay, where is my child at? How are they
Yeah.
coping with this? And help yourself understand that, help your kids understand that, so that when they do experience engaging and potentially toxic relationships, because it's going to happen, how do we
Mhm.
help mitigate that, right? Tying it all
Yeah.
back. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. I know. So I trust me, I do think about these things, and like I feel that they know that I'm like, I deal with things head on. I'll communicate. But then you have the other parent that has an avoidance, not behavior, or is it behavior? Avoidance
Mhm.
behavior, or what
Yeah,
is
the
that? Like, is
style.
that
Yeah.
the term? Yeah. So he doesn't want to deal with things. And this is why I'm like, I always tell my daughter, like, you're seeking out something that's just not it's not on your time. Do you know what I mean? Like, I think it's okay to let know what you need, and then you got to let that person come to you. You can't force it, right? So you have the one parent that's willing to listen and compromise and understand, and then you have the other one that's like
Please type.
closed off. Do you know what I mean? Like, so I don't know how this is going to impact them, but it's, it'll be interesting to see. And then, like she's very vocal. And then my son, is more quiet. I do think that boys are, they can be, they are different usually, but I don't know. We'll see if I just don't know if he's always, maybe he sees it or knows certain things and just doesn't, he's not as vocal. I won't know yet. I feel later on it'll come to light, but it'll be interesting. So I do wonder about these things. So this is why I thought it'd be like a really good conversation. And then as always, they can always come back to this episode and get my opinions and feelings on certain things. And so my goal was to, speak to not just my listeners, but to my kids too. Like you're, because I want them to be careful when going forward, like when they're choosing relationships, like, you know, how does this person make you feel? Do you feel energized after leaving them? Do you feel that peace and that joy? Because when you're young, it's all about that attraction and you know what I mean and what you see. But I think they're not paying attention to how they feel. And so like I try to like make them think about that. Like to a guy, I ask the randomest things, and they're looking at me like, what? It's to get them to think. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Create
and
curiosity, right?
yes, so I remember when Evan must have been a year ago, he was gonna go on a double date. It was so funny. He's only 14 now, but he's like, I'm so like because he's shy, he's more reserved. I don't know what to talk about. I don't know what to say. And I was like, Evan, a girl is gonna be happy if you just ask her about herself
Mhm.
at this age anyways,
Clarity.
right?
Just make it
Right.
simple
So
and gentle. She'll be all right.
yes, so it's funny because yeah, I don't know, that just made me think of that.
Cute.
But
Yeah.
I try to get him to be like more selective, like be careful with who you're around. You know what I mean? Like who you give your attention to. So and I was told recently not to life coach them. I'm like, the audacity of these kids. I do feel later in life they're going to appreciate that they had a mother that you know what I mean? And try to give and it's I'm not coming to them as a parent
Right.
all the time or I'm parenting,
Right.
So I'm more with the questions. That's a life coach. It's my job to ask questions. I'm here to challenge you and question you. So
Right.
my kids don't always like that, but I think they'll appreciate it later. And if not, oh well, it gives me peace of mind, right?
Probably
um,
will. Again, they're just not in that headspace to be okay with it because they're young. They're not emotionally mature all the and as they shouldn't be. They're the age that they are for a reason, and that's where
yes.
we meet
Yeah.
them because that's where they're at. So we can't expect more of them, right?
Right.
Yeah,
Right. I just try to make them think more about it. Do you know what I mean?
sure.
Think more
Yeah.
about, so it's like, and I try to tell them, "Ooh, they showed you who they are. They just showed you who they are. Like, come
Mhm.
on now, like receive it, see it." And they're like, "Mom," I'm like, "Oh," but I gotta let them learn. I gotta let them make their
Yes,
mistakes.
gotta make them
But
let them walk the walk.
yes, but I really do want to like, speak to people like, especially for like if it's a family member, right? Because I don't hide that I don't speak to all of my family, and I'm okay with that. I don't like it. I don't love it. But it is what it is. But it's me protecting my peace and my energy, and knowing my worth, right? But, you know, I want them to know that, like, they don't have to let someone else's brokenness
Sure,
define them,
sure.
right? I don't want them to feel stuck around a person who doesn't treat them right, who are, I don't want them to be stuck in their world. Like you don't have to be there. Be in your own. You're allowed to take a step back. You're allowed to breathe. Allow yourself to become you. Even if someone else, even if that person that should matter to you and that should matter to doesn't understand you, they don't have to. It's not your job to carry them. It's your job to carry yourself. So, I mean, that's like the biggest message that like I would want my kids to hear.
That was beautiful. Very well
Thank
said.
you.
Very meaningful.
So, breakaways. Toxic relationships are real, but it is your power to rise above them, right? You don't have to let them consume your joy, your peace, or your purpose. So remember, you can't always choose those around you, but you can always choose how much access they have to you and your heart. So until next time, keep pushing, keep shining, keep thriving. Hashtag self love.